All right. Hey, folks. Welcome to The Pleasure of Doubt. My name is Brett, The Pleasure of Doubt. And we are continuing our theme of discussing free will and determinism. I know this is, it seems like this channel is just becoming a channel of free will. I promise you there will be other topics discussed. But for now, we're continuing our deep dive into to this great topic. And I think we've been doing well. And we're going to try to keep on mixing it up and pushing deeper and deeper. So I'd like to welcome my guests. So we've got Tyler, who's just started his own YouTube channel that's about to get started, Metagora, and there'll be there's links in the show notes. And we've got Matthew of the Betterment Project, and his links are in the show notes as well. And writer John Buck is here, but he's off camera right now. I think he's having a bit of a snack. And you can have and again. Yeah, links to his Twitter is in the show notes as well. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you to all the viewers. If you are watching this is a brand new channel. If you could like, subscribe, tell all your friends. Every little bit helps. So please click that button and click that little bell that lets you know when we are posting new videos. All right, so there's some I posted a couple links to a couple of Google Docs in the show notes just to help people out. One is a file that John put together, which summarizes a bit of our prior conversations on free will. And another is a document that Matthew's put together where we're going to have some common terms that we're using for this stream. And sorry, we're going to have a whiteboard going. I don't know, Tyler, can you get the whiteboard? I know you're good at getting that.
Did you want to use the collaborative one on the website?
Sure, whatever
There's
works.
a way that you can do it directly in Zoom. Just hit share and then hit whiteboard.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just for each individual. So if you need to present something, you can create.
Okay, that sounds simple enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we thought we would do is first just get down some shared definitions to keep everything clear. And welcome, Concept Hut is watching, and he has said he's determined to annoy us in chat, and I'm sure he will succeed in that. That's we're fated to have that happen. So, but thanks for watching, and thanks for everyone else who's chiming in. So first of all, let's see if we can agree on some definitions. Now, we started talking about so free will. To start off, there's two basic versions of free will, in the common philosophical parlance. One is libertarian free will, and the other is compatibilist free will. And so my basic understanding of these terms is libertarian free will is free will that is neither determined, so caused by the prior state of the universe, the prior state of the system, or the prior state of the prior state of causes, that is neither determined nor random. And we can go into in a second. We'll go into a little bit more about determinism. The focus of this stream is actually going to be on the determinism side rather than the free will side, but we should get these down. Compatibilist free will, as I understand it, is free will. So that is will that is free from external coercion. So it's internal to the system. So the person, that's where the decision making goes on, and there's no outside causes to influence what is going on. Is that? I think I was a bit awkward, but is that does anyone disagree with those basic definitions of those two terms?
Well, I don't know. The way that you define free will seems almost nondescript. It's just like a definition of free will in regards to what it's not. But I can think of tons of other things that are technically neither determined nor random, but have nothing to do with free will, like a ham sandwich or something is like that. That's kind of a separate concept. Really, I want to know what the definition for what free will would be.
We had a really good one. It was something like that control resides within the person, not without, or something like that. I thought that was one that I could agree with.
So then we have to get into what is control, because
Okay.
you know, like there's sort of the colloquial version of control where we say where it comes from was it within, we say that's within our control, but that decision making, that control could be, I think, carried out in a deterministic manner. So I mean, maybe we should first nail down.
Yeah.
and
See,
I think
right
it becomes clear
away, we have to go to the determinism.
right. So my broad definition of determinism is where the state of scaling way out, the state of the universe at t, so t prime is based on the state of the universe at time t. So and with t prime being like the next instant, whatever that shortest period of time is between t and t prime. So that now you can scale that in or out as wide or narrow as you want. You can scale that all the way down to two atoms interacting with each other. So the state of the system of these two atoms at t prime would be based on the state of it at time t. Or you could deal with systems, you could deal with collections. So you can scale in or out, but basically it's the state of the universe at one time is caused by the state of the universe at the time before that. Now, I always say I'm not a hard determinist, and that I think there is room for pure randomness to come in. So I always say subject to randomness. But I think for ease of discussion, we don't necessarily have to say subject to randomness each time. But as long as we understand that, I think most people are open to, for example, quantum mechanics describing pure randomness, but there's different conceptions of quantum mechanics. So some people think some versions are compatible with determinism and others have pure randomness. But for our purposes, it doesn't really matter, because I think quantum randomness people don't generally define as libertarian free will either.
The definition of determinism that I think we agreed on during our first conversation, Brett, where the prior state of events causes the current state of events in such that it could not follow in any other way. Yeah, I know that Brett had kind of a hang up with the term necessary there, but I think if we use instead of necessary, just could not follow any other way.
Yeah, and again, with the caveat subject to randomness.
Well, that's the thing. That's an additional. So there's determinism and randomness that can occur. So like if we're including randomness inside of determinism, that kind of defeats the whole definition that we have for determinism.
Well, it's just there's two versions. There's hard determinism and then I guess soft determinism.
I know. Just like at least from my impression, I think there are certain things within the world that are determined by prior states of events, and certain things, that are not caused by prior state of events, like radioactive decay or something like that, where it's not just, even though it does happen within time, and we can look at some sort of precursor to it, it's not the case that the instance of it happening at this one point in time was necessitated by the prior state of events. So that's why I think that it's good to have kind of the clear distinction between what is determined and what is random.
Yeah, and I think in Concept HUD it's asking, please define randomness. And I think what you've said is basically a good definition of randomness, that randomness is, not determined by prior events. Now,
right.
The reason why I call libertarian free will that is neither random nor determined is that, free will, if it exists, would fit under not determined. So it would be adding to the sort of trichotomy there. The way I see it, the reason I've said this before, the reason I can't buy into free will is I can't conceive of it being other than randomness and determinism being a dichotomy. And the trick is to figure out some way of having a third prong.
Well, I don't even know if you need a third prong exactly, because there is, like, I think we can maybe split up determinism into two subsections of determined through external means and determined through internal means. So like the dominoes, that's something, the falling of one domino is determined by the prior domino hitting it. So that would be an external means from the first domino, or the second domino, however you want to think of it. And then through internal means, like the person that believes in free will, like even libertarian free will, they would believe that their actions were caused and determined by their own internal self of some sort. And they believe that their own internal self is somehow capable of choosing among various options. I kind of get the picture of like you're playing chess, and it is the case that if you move a knight, it always has to move in an L shape. If you move a bishop, it always has to move in a diagonal shape. But the movements of those chess pieces are not determined by anything by their fellow chess pieces. They're actually determined by the person playing chess in that instance. And so similar to that, I think that's how the libertarian free will would imagine it, where our internal selves are the things that are causing certain actions or causing our actions.
That's where I diverge with you. Like, to me, that sounds like what I understand compatibilism could be, or here's where we can differentiate, whereas that sounds like what we're talking about when we talk about compatibilism, because we're saying if the decision is made internal to the system, the brain body, for example, we say it's uncaused by external events. So that's free will in the compatibilist way. But the way in which the self figures out what to do may be done in a determined way. So if that's the case, then that wouldn't fit for libertarian free will, right?
I think the I guess what would divide the compatibilist notion of free will and the indeterminist notion of free will would be the fact that it could be some other way, absent of randomness. Like from the libertarian free will notion, that they could have, say, raised their left hand, they could have raised their right hand, and the fact that they raised their right hand in no way retrospectively tells us that they could not have raised their left hand. Whereas for the compatibilist, it would be the case.
So maybe the definition of libertarian free will is will that is neither determined nor random, will that could have been a different way that is neither determined nor random, right?
Determined through external means, nor random.
No. But why? And this is actually, so we've had some discussions.
Wait. I think this is what's going on here. Your use of determinism in this sense is bordering on causality. What you're insisting on here is the notion of causality. And that's a separate issue from the determinism, the causal determinism issue that's usually tied with free will.
Okay, now I'm confused because for me, it's all about causality. So maybe can you elaborate?
Right. That's it. So you are concerned with the notion of causality. And yes. I think you're right. Okay, so that is a separate issue from the one that is argued between determinism and free will. And that is being described by John here in the notions of internal versus external forcings. How are we? So causality is just the idea that every effect has a preceding and antecedent cause, and that you can point to it and say, this led to that.
No,
right?
But we're trying to describe the nature of the causality. So is it?
Well, actually, what we're doing is, I think, usually in the discussion of determinism as free will is locating that causality. We're trying to locate it.
But look.
Is it inside yourself or outside yourself? In other words, are you doing human being things because you're a human being, or are you doing pod things because you're a pod?
See, that to me is okay. So this may be where our disconnect is, but that to me is not how I think we should think about free will. I don't know how other people think about free will, but to me, it just having that distinction doesn't answer the question. Because the question is, how are we making those decisions? How is our internal will being carried out?
Well, we could we could discuss that in every instance. That's a specific discussion of every instance. And in fact, what you're determining there is you're assembling the causal chain. And I think that's the distinct purview of consciousness, is to assemble causal chains. That's in fact what we do, is we look at potentiality, that which has not connected yet with a causal chain, and then we connect the current moment of causal chains to that potential moment.
Okay, but then how are you differentiating between libertarian and compatibilist free will?
Well, libertarian free will is this notion that there is a much larger element of will involved than is traditionally ascribed by, say, in like the normal, like Sapolsky environment, where it's little parasites in our brain that make us do everything.
So, sorry, how do you define compatibilist free will then?
Compatibilism is just trying to make sense of notions of responsibility and how you can locate that within a person.
No.
That's usually, I think that's ultimately derived from legalistic attempts primarily, which is interesting because,
I think that's the effect of compatibilism, that's a useful application of compatibilism.
Well, yeah, but
I don't think that's the definition, that's the essence of compatibilism, which is that we're differentiating. See, to me, what you guys are describing here is compatibilism. Now I'm not an expert philosopher by any means, so I may be wrong here, but this has always been my understanding of the difference. Where libertarian free will, we're not differentiating just between internal to us and external to us. We're saying, how does the internal to us take place? Otherwise, it seems that they're kind of the same.
No. I mean, you have a sense that you have an internal space, right?
Sure.
If you have a brain inside your body.
Yeah,
you have a mind inside that brain, so to speak.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think almost everybody agrees with that. Like the issue is, how do I exercise my will? So for me, what I think my will is a type of information processing. So I've got, and I'm not great at the technical language, but I've got, electrical impulses that are going through my brain that are conveying information in all sorts of different ways. And that process, part of that processing is making choices. So it's taking in input from all sorts of different places, doing whatever little calculations in the brain, and then making a decision would be an output. And I can, so that's my will. My will is a type of information processing that I think, again, if I always talk about the thought experiment, where if I take my will the instant before I make a decision, sort of a theoretical snapshot, will my decision always be the same given the state of everything up till that point, subject to randomness? And what would need to be different to make it different?
So is it like an argument from ultimate ignorance that we can never know the exact causal chain, therefore we should just assume that it's occurring and that we have no effect on it? And that
in practicality, we can never know the exact. At least for now, we can't know the exact. I mean, it's combinatorially
right, but you're feeling it, aren't you? I mean, aren't you feeling it right now? Like in this present moment, aren't you aware? Aren't you awake, Pod? Aren't you making decisions?
Yeah, but it's not about consciousness. Like, I don't just define consciousness automatically as free, right?
No, but I'm asking if you're experiencing the same thing that I'm experiencing right now. That I'm choosing the words. I'm choosing to respond right now in this moment to you.
You know what? Whenever I think about this, whenever I try to really introspect on this, like, I have to sort of recognize that I don't have access to most of what's going on with my choices. Like, I don't have a conscious process of how I'm determining which set of words in which order I'm saying. They sort of come to me, right? Sure. when I hear an input and I sort of wait a second and ideas pop into my head, and then I think we sort of casually have this feeling of making free choices, but when I really think about my choices, I mean, they sort of pop into my head, right? And I don't really have access to the vast majority of what's going on. So
all right. So it seems like the kind of core component or distinction between compatibilist free will and the libertarian free will is kind of removal of the aspect of necessity, where it could not have followed any other way. Whereas, so the compatibilist free will is caused by internal means, but in such a way that it could not have been otherwise. So it was necessitated as we used it earlier, absent inclusion of randomness. So if there was randomness, it wouldn't be necessitated by, and then for the libertarian free will, it's caused by internal means in such a way that it could have been otherwise, irregardless of the inclusion of randomness. Like, I think the libertarian free will person would agree that if there was randomness that was causing it to be the case that it could have been otherwise, it still wouldn't qualify as being free will. So the libertarian free will advocate is, I guess, arguing against necessity, where the prior state of events necessitates the following state of events.
Right. And this is where that thought experiment comes in. Like, it's easy to sort of think in a broad term, but if we think instant by instant, thought by thought, calculation by calculation, if we sort of thought experiment, Goduncan experiment, just freeze right before we make that decision, the thought experiment to me always leads to absent randomness. We're going to make that same choice. And then you can go an instant before that, and an instant before that, an instant before that. Like, we can't think big picture. We have to think of causation as each state of the universe leads to the next state of the universe, leads to the next state of the universe. If that makes sense.
All right, Matthew, you want to add in and share your whiteboard too?
Let me give you an example real quick of what I meant earlier by connecting a causal chain to a potentiality, okay? And the way I think this works. So I have memories, okay? I have memories. When I was 3, I was just telling a story earlier. I'll use it again. When I was 3, I attempted to turn on a spigot. It's coming out of the house. It didn't have a handle on it, right? It's just a little metal rod, no handle. I wanted to turn it though, and there was a rock laying next to it. And I guess I thought I could hammer it on. So I grabbed it to steady it, because spigots are going to move on a wall. It's a brick wall. I remember it very clearly, in fact, even though I was 3. And then I, tried to turn it on. But probably can't see it on the video, but there's a scar that runs all the way across the finger. Yeah, that's a very clear and distinct memory of that thing. Now, I also have memories where I have actually successfully performed mechanical changes to a spigot with a tool. Now, let's pretend that I did something exactly like it, but I was successful that time. Now I have a third moment, okay? A third moment. So once where I failed, once where I succeeded. Now I've got a third moment, and I'm just before it. And I call back in my memories, and I'm trying to decide. I'm trying to make a choice. Do I do it a third time? What do I do?
Well, sorry. I'm trying to understand. Like, in my thought experiment, we're literally rewinding.
Wait, don't wait.
No, but I'm trying to understand what you're suggesting. I'm trying to understand when you say imagine a different way. Are we saying there's 3 different universes?
No. I'm saying very specifically in my life, this has happened. Just pretend that it's happened, okay? I tried to turn the spigot on once and I failed. I got this scar here.
Yeah. I
tried to do it a second time and I got it right. It worked. Now I'm on my 3rd attempt. I have 2 memories, Pod.
Sure. I can't predict exactly, but one potential could be realizing it's high risk and not deciding not to do it, or another potential is being I still really need to do it, so I'm going to try it again, even though I should go to the store and buy or you're 3 years old. But
do you see my point though?
No, not in that. What the thought experiment more like in a given instant of making that
if I make a decision to hit the spigot, which memory am I attaching it to? Which justification route am I taking?
Well, no, but it could be both. I mean, and you're weighing.
No. You personally, tell me how you would make this decision. Come on.
I mean, for me,
this is how you would do it. I did it successfully that one time. I'm going to do it again. I wouldn't oh, I did it unsuccessfully that one time. I'm going to do it again, right?
Well,
I would choose.
You may or you may not.
I would choose which memory.
But let's just say.
Now, you can make it more complicated. I know you can. You can add more stuff to it. You can add more stuff to it, more justification, more analyses, all sorts of reasons.
Here's the thing. I'm not saying we don't deliberate. I think we do deliberate. But it seems to me that we deliberate in a way that is determined. That if we take your final decision of to do it again or not, if we then go an instant back, if we just rewind right before you making that decision, the state of the universe, the state of your mind, whichever memory you were focusing on,
look, you're going to the weird abstract place. Don't do that. Okay. Don't give me the argument from ignorance. I can't do argument from ignorance.
No, but I agree. Can't know it, then... we think about all these things. Like, that's part of deliberation. And I think we do that whether we have free will or not.
What about my example? Look, I'll do it right now. Okay. Look, I'll make a new one. Brand new scenario. This has never happened. This is a brand new thing. It's never happened in the world or the universe ever. Oh, hold on. Okay. Third chance. What do I do? Come on, Pod. What do I do? I don't know how to make this decision. What do I do?
Do it again. There you go. Something led you. So right now, you just had a certain cause of thoughts and decisions, including my input, and you did it again. If we went back in time to that second, chances are you'd drop it again and again and again. Right?
Well, I mean, I'm being theatrical, of course, right? But I've had many prior scenarios that I've dropped pins and caught them. Okay. I've had lots of experience in this world using this body. I had to learn it painstakingly as a baby. I watched my two boys do it, right? I don't remember it personally myself. I still remember learning the length of my feet, though, every now and again when I stub my toes going up these stairs. Look, man, I agree with all that, but I'm not getting. Can you bring it home to the free will determinism okay.
argument?
In every one of these examples, you and I have a direct experiential element of making a decision about these kinds of things. I'm trying to simplify it in certain ways so that you can, I hope, agree with me that these things are happening. They're very real. So I can give you, look, if you want me to try to explain where I think that will resides in the physical realm, I can try to explain it. I can try to explain and fill the gap of ignorance.
But it's not about physical either, because I don't think physical matters here. It's not like there could be, whether we call it physical or not, I don't think matters. Whether there are non-physical things, I think would seem to follow. I mean, just saying something non-physical doesn't make it free. Just either, and whether we call our thoughts physical or not, I don't really care. Like
I
think talk about the direct experience.
To add something to this discussion.
You're muted, Matt.
I'm not muted now, though.
Okay.
No.
All right. Oh, geez. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe we should.
Well, I guess I'll present what I'm going to present, and then we'll see what happens. I'm trying to understand.
Oh wait, sorry. Before you do that, Matthew, a concept had a question for you. Are you saying that randomness is the lack of ability for a thing to perceive a causal system of something?
I think that has to be pretty close. What I was about to get into is that I'm extremely uncomfortable, or I could say skeptical, of making statements that are not at first embodied within the perceiver of those events. So if I start making claims about determinism outside of the perspective of those who are watching what is being determined, I become skeptical of that. It becomes too abstract, too far away from what we can know and perceive and understand. It becomes a mere abstraction instead of an abstraction that is connected with the way we think, the way we behave, and how we interact with the universe. So randomness, so far as I can tell, is primarily contingent upon there being someone there to go, oh, well, that was really random. Otherwise, I'm not sure what we're talking about. I mean, it's I don't know what the science of
in,
randomness is what I'm trying to say.
And I'm not an expert on quantum mechanics, but I'm thinking of randomness in however quantum mechanics considers randomness.
Sure. But that's, I mean,
yeah, there's the other way.
Does the universe think that that's random?
Right. There's the other way in which we
don't know.
typically talk about randomness, like the roll of a dice or the roll of a roulette wheel or something like that, which is at least random from our particular perspectives.
From our perspective, it is, but I don't think anybody sees the roll of a die as non-deterministic. Like if we could know all the,
it's at least
spin and shape and the air pressure, and if we were Laplace's demon, we could predict exactly where that die led.
There is at least a way to distinguish it though from like internally caused events. So like for most things that we do, we have intentionality behind what we're trying to do, and then attaining that or not attaining what we intended. Whereas for physical things, like the roulette wheel or the roll of a dice or the dominoes falling, these are all absent any sort of intentionality behind it. Sure. And so there is a way in which we can, like, if we wanted to make a random decision, we would try to like do something random, scare quotes, just to provide some sort of basis.
Yeah, to be clear, I don't think we could choose to do randomness in the way I'm talking. I'm talking about pure randomness, and it wouldn't be like, that's the whole point. It wouldn't be a choice to do it. It would just happen.
Wait, what do you mean you couldn't choose to do a random event?
It wouldn't. It's not like I choose to do random by going on random.com and doing the number generator and getting a random result. It's that, in making a decision, let's just say, do I want chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream? And some randomness clicks in, and it could have gone either way, but it just random, it landed on chocolate versus vanilla, and by whatever quantum information processing
wait, tell me what the real process is for you.
The causal process would be you have well, there's a bunch of
the mental one. Your mental process.
The mental
ice cream. How do you do it?
Well, the deliberations would be, what are the choices I know in my mind? So do I see, if I'm at Baskin Robbins, I see all the different flavors. I remember which ones I like. I'll have
is it 31? What is it?
Yeah, 31 flavors. Yeah, they never have 31 flavors, but yeah, but they
rotate.
Right? Part of the deliberations would be about the quality of feelings I have. Like I might have just a feeling of I hankering for chocolate or a hankering for vanilla, or hey, today I want to try something new. All of that would be in the information processing that it goes into choosing chocolate or vanilla. So it could be very determined, even though I don't have access to all of it. Like I'll just sort of pause and I'll think, I feel like chocolate. I don't have access to all the decisions that went into my feeling of chocolate. But I mean, and I should say, like my, I'm partial. I've said this in other streams. I'm partial to, IIT, integrated information theory, which is that our consciousness is a type of information processing. So the information is processing in our brain. When it gets integrated in a certain way, it's these feedback loops. I have the quality of sensations. But that could be very compatible. You can easily imagine how that can be very compatible with a deterministic view, because it's the information processing. Yeah.
Okay. Pleasure of doubt. Before I lose my train of thought, let me see if you'll agree with this.
Sure.
There is a sense in which I will totally agree with, the first proposition is the idea of the reversed universe. Every time you reverse the universe and you play it back, we do the same thing, obviously, because we're the same system making the same choice. I don't think that has anything to do with whether we are a self-determining system, though. Then the other issue is there's a sense in which, of course, we are determined, because if we weren't determined, what would we be? Like things have to progress a certain way. And so those are two things I can agree with. The problem is I don't see how either of those have anything to do with free will, have anything to do with whether we can say that free will doesn't exist.
I mean, to me, that's everything that determines free will. I'm not really like, but maybe there is like it seemed earlier. Now I may be completely wrong. I mean, I'll admit I've listened to a lot, but I haven't done in-depth reading, so I'm not sure in depth how the philosophers all look at this. To me, it only makes sense to talk about it on that micro step to step to step, this causal web.
Right.
But you seem to be talking, maybe you guys are seeing it a little differently than I am.
Yeah, maybe working off a little bit what Matthew said there. Like if we use that same sort of analysis that you gave, and we understand the differences between like actual random events and determined events. So like assuming that, let's say we walked through a maze and we took like 2 left turns and 1 right turn or something like that. Sure. And then, but each of those turns was done off of the passing of a photon through a polarized lens or bouncing off of that polarized lens. So something that's truly random insofar as like what we can.
No, wait, hold on. That we decide. Sorry, that we have our portable little device and we pause and we look at it.
Yes.
Okay.
And then that's what made us to do that thing. Now, say we've gone through
did we decide to do that?
So we made those 3 turns, 2 right and 1 left.
Yeah.
Now let's reverse time. Let's look backwards. And but let's imagine that this randomness wasn't something that we were looking, or yeah, whatever. Let's reverse time and look back at each of those instances. As we're reversing time, I guess it depends on what we're meaning by reversing time, because every time I think of reversing time, I'm thinking of like reversing a VHS.
Yep.
And so it's like it's going to be the case that if I recorded something on my videotape recorder and then I put that VHS into a VCR, it's going to play back exactly what happened. And so it would appear as if it was randomly caused because it happens exactly the same way as before. Yep. When in fact we know, because we're using quantum randomness to make these decisions, that it wasn't actually randomly caused, or that it wasn't deterministically caused.
So hold on. So no, we're not rewinding the VHS. It depends what you mean. Like for example, it depends where you rewind the VHS. So you're not rewinding the VHS. You're returning to the prior state of the universe. So let's just say
I'm sorry. Are we deciding to rewind the VHS? How do we choose when to stop?
No,
it's a thought. It's a thought experiment. You can but here's the thing. In the thought experiment,
I mean, like you can't escape. Listen, you can't escape it ever. That's the problem, and that's ultimately where you end up. So even in mathematics, you end up with things like the axioms of choice because.
No, but hold on.
Let Brett get through his point first.
So let's take 2 points that we could reverse the state of the universe. One, after we've flipped our little device and it says turn right, and before we flip our little device and we don't know what it's going to say. So if we rewind to right after, we're always going to make that same turn because the set of causal choices is going to lead us to look at that, and that's to be part of the causal chain. Now, if we set it back to just before we press the button, well, that button is random, so the next time we press it, it may not get. The next time it may choose left, right? So each time, maybe there's a 50% chance or whatever of choosing right or left. It's not going to play out the same way because that pure randomness is going to factor. So the next time it turns left.
Well, then couldn't you say the same thing like for the libertarian free will? They could just say, okay, when you reverse back and instead of some random cause determining which way I would go, left or right, it was me, the one that was causing it to go left or right. And if we're not reversing time like a VHS, we're actually going backwards in time and then redoing it, then I could instead choose to go right this time.
But what is me? Like in my version of me, what I am is an information processing system.
Yeah, but look, the analogy thing is really going to throw you for a loop because this reversal of thing, as you were rightly pointing out, John, but you just kind of barreled through with it anyways. You're just going to use it anyways. There's a real clear distinction between certain theories of time and what's really going on. And I think personally that like you can't assume that you can just rewind a VHS tape. I don't see how that's even remotely
it's a
possible.
thought experiment, so it's not about.
No, wait, but the inability of the thought experiment to comport with reality is in fact the point. That's it. That is the point.
I mean,
the forward, that is what defines time, the forward moving nature of it, the unpredictability aspect of it.
No one is suggesting we can actually rewind time in the way
right,
you're
but
suggesting,
okay,
though.
so let me explain how the thought experiment would only be able to be carried out, and that's by having a VHS, some kind of VHS. In other words, what you're saying is, in order to rewind time, we are calling upon some record, that is time, that we are asking to use to play backwards, right?
Well, we're saying, imagine it is possible. Laplace's demon can just, he knows the position. He's external to our universe, and he knows the position and everything. He knows the state of the universe, right. And he can just say, "Pam, you're back to that state." Now, we don't remember that alternate unit. Like, we don't remember going back. We're back. We're also back to that state, right? Mm-hmm. We're not. So it's not like we remember rewinding, because that would be part of the causal chain.
So, like, maybe think of it like a video game where you can save your game at a certain point and then return back to that save point.
Right.
Okay.
And your character has no idea.
It's no different though. You're just chunking it instead of like smoothly recording. You're just going back, one frame, 10 frames, 20 frames.
Yes, exactly. You can reset it to in the thought experiment. You can
right.
choose
And so all right. So okay, hold on. But in order for that move to be made, one is appealing to a thing which already exists and already happened and already had a causal chain, and then reconstructing that thing.
Sure.
This is not possible for the future. Right?
Right. The way I usually frame it is, having made a choice.
In order for it to be possible in the future, you must have one thing. One additional thing. Choice. That's it. That's it.
I'm still not getting, like, I'm not grasping what the point is that we can't technically do this. I mean, thought experiments are often like that, where you can't technically do it.
But the inability of the thought experiment, it's kind of a reductio ad absurdum.
I think
it's an empirical inductive observation that we've now finally made, let's say.
Is your point, Tyler, that the very terms of the thought experiment are made in such a way that the only way that we could think of what we would do is in regards to what we already did?
You're undermining the whole thing, right? Yeah. You're assuming
like it would be better to kind of say, okay, we're moving forward in time, like absent any sort of
yes,
cause.
Exactly. And that's the problem with physics, and that's what they ultimately discovered in mathematics too, when they combined them, that there is a directionality to time for very specific and valid reasons, and it's regarding choice. That's what's so fascinating about it. It's regarding choice.
All right, I really want to hear from Matt, because he's been very patient this whole time.
He's got to go into his system, and that's we should. How long do you want, Matt? Give
I don't know,
because I don't want to. I need to hold it back.
I am not capable of giving you a time right now. 5-10 minutes, let's say. Okay. How do I share an image right now?
So there's a share button. If you look at the Zoom, there's a share button right in the middle.
Share screen.
Yeah. So okay. If you pull up share, you'll see all of your open windows. So and then you could choose the one you want.
I guess I need to choose that one. I guess that'll work. It's not pretty, but there it is. Oh, that shows my whole desktop too. Did it just show my whole desktop?
Well, it just shows the things. It doesn't show your whole desktop, but it shows we can see your tabs are open. So, okay. And I don't see any porn.
No personal information. Okay. All right. Yeah, so I'll just walk through this. So I've tried to say in other instances, I think in our last recording, that I'm worried that determinism is something like it's too simple an idea to map what we're talking about. There's a sense in which we can think about determinism as, okay, prior things cause current things or something like that. Fine.
Yes.
Fine. That happens. That's a thing. No problem. But that doesn't tell us anything about what is happening, about what kind of systems are in action. And so the way I map it is, instead of talking about determinism, I try to talk about consistency, which, to go to my little
just to add,
definition.
Go
ahead.
That I have no. I got that written down. Consistency. We need to get into that for sure.
Okay, awesome.
Wait, hold on, Matt. I think you opened up a different. You had changed it so they were.
Okay.
Did you open up the wrong one?
Well,
right now it's showing the Google document.
Perfect, because it's got the definition I want. So
no. I'm saying you had gone back and bulleted them so it was easier to read.
Okay.
But
I don't. I see what you're saying. Okay, you're right.
There
How about that one? Okay.
Yeah. That's easier to read. Yes.
Okay. All right. Whatever you need, Pleasure Dap.
No, it's just easier for us in the audience to to follow. Yeah.
So, consistency, by which I mean a means of thinking about or tracking complicated relationships within and between systems. So the idea here is, if we are starting with that as the premise by which we are analyzing the universe, like let's say you have consistency on one side, or consistency on one side and determinism on the other. Determinism is only looking at whether or not prior causes cause current effects. It's all it's looking at. It's the only project it's open to.
Right.
That means that any project that's more complicated than that, it's completely blind to. It doesn't even care. So when you're backing the universe back and forth like you are, I wasn't quite sure what Tyler's point was, but when you're backing it up, it doesn't matter, because you're just reversing what those systems have decided to do, or have whether or not they've decided to do. That's part of the project, is to figure out, can they decide what they're doing? So it doesn't mean anything to me if you talk about determinacy or reversing the universe, because these don't seem to matter to the complexity of the system. They don't have nothing to do with the system. The system is, if you will, more important than the concept of determinism. So,
sure.
All right. Well, I'm surprised you're agreeing with me.
No, well, I mean, I should just, I think this is an academic, like this is an interesting philosophical, and it's interesting to think about, but what you're talking about is much more practical. Like,
sure.
Determinism, free will, I mean, it boggles the mind, it makes the head hurt, but we don't tend to involve this in our general day-to-day decision making.
I don't think
talking about understanding systems, we do care about that. When we're thinking about modeling systems, yes, I mean, we very much care about how the system is constructed and all the complicated relationships and the complex relationships and so on.
Well, I don't know that determinism is all that complicated of a system. I think it boggles the mind because we know that the universe is more complicated than that. And so we go, how could it possibly be that simple? And it's because it's not that simple. Determinism is too simplistic of a concept.
I'm not sure if I follow you there, but keep on going.
Okay. I'll go back to my whiteboard if I somehow can. Here we go. Okay. So I'm putting consistency at the top as like the primary way we can delineate the universe in terms of systems and the way systems react to each other and produce effects. So determinism comes down to something like only simple systems or complicated systems. And if I have my definitions correct, complicated system is simply one that has a lot of parts. And so it's hard for humans to track, but we totally can. But then when I'm defining the self-determinism, I don't think I've spoken about the definition of self-determinism. Have I got it in my doc? I bet I don't.
No, you do.
I do?
Matthews,
okay.
Where I just saw weak self-determinism. Go down. You had it below.
Okay, yes. Yeah, so I'm trying to decide how much free will we have. I don't know how much free will we have. But what I strongly object to is using a concept like determinism to eliminate the possibility of free will. It's a ridiculous notion in my mind because it doesn't have anything to do with the real world. It's too abstract a concept. It's way, way out there. And we're dealing with real life where there's complicated things happening. And so Matthew's weak self-determinism, a system which appears to choose between a set of possible options. So I'm not even going all the way and saying, well, I'll leave that. Matthew's strong self-determinism, redesigning the self through self-awareness. So this is the idea of you're such a complicated system that you can actually see yourself, see what you've been doing inside your own head, and you start mapping it, and you start figuring out how you can improve yourself. Now, of course, that is by degree as well. We are only so self-aware, and we can't be aware of every single thing that's happening in our mind, but we can observe the way we react, and we can use models to make predictable models of who we are. And we have these internal reactions like, yes, you found the right model, like these intuitions that go, and those seem to have some kind of effect. And I'm arguing that perhaps what free will is, let's see here, I went through free agency. Free agency is the idea of the degree to which control of the whole self is in the hands of the whole self. So that would include your conscious, your unconscious, your ego, all these different parts. I'm again claiming that the system of the self is the thing that is determining what will action, not the prior state of the universe. That's too abstract. That's way over in abstract land. Here in practical land, we are the agents that self-determine.
But could I just
go ahead? I think I'm.
But let me just translate it into my version. See if you agree with this. So you say, thinking the state of the universe, but let's zoom in onto the self. Could we say there's a state of the self at any given moment, a state of the whole self at any given moment?
We can say that.
So that's what I mean by the state of the universe. So we could say the state of the whole self at moment t, and then the state of the whole self at moment t prime.
Why do we think that we can say that?
Well, because in our abstract looking back of time, we can differentiate between how we are.
Are you imagining?
Hold on. Also, would looking at the whole self at state or at time prime and time prime plus one, would that negate libertarian free will if it were the case at that point? Because if it was the case that somebody could make these kind of libertarian free choices, and we could reverse time and look at each of the prior moments to him making that choice, would it suddenly negate it somehow, or I don't see what it proves.
No. The mere fact that we can differentiate doesn't prove anything. I was just trying to show how I was talking about the state of the universe, that we can zoom that in or out to any degree of resolution, right? So we can take the level of abstraction of just looking at the state of the universe in terms of our whole self at a given point.
I agree that we can choose to reframe at any moment, right? I agree that we can do that.
Remember, I'm in favor of choice, so you don't got to emphasize choice. I agree with
right. But the method by which we do these things, it has no. I don't know. It has no rooting in determinism, so to speak. So determinism, what's the history of this concept, this word, and what is it that we develop a sense of it from, right?
Right. There's one thing I appreciate about, appreciate and I'll also criticize somewhat regarding Matthew's position, is it seems to be very much based within kind of how do we know certain things? How do we know if something is determined? How do we know if something has some sort of choice or free choice or anything like that? And it is very much practical in that sense. Okay, we can assume something is determined if it shows patterns of behavior and is consistent with those patterns of behavior or something like that. And we can assume that something has some aspect of self-determinism if it appears to, that keyword being appears to, make choices. And I think there is a way in which our appearances could be deceptive in some sense. So I could imagine a Roomba in which it is being put through that sort of maze that we were talking about earlier. And inside the Roomba, we've had the little quantum randomizer so that from our perspective, it would appear as if it was self-determining which direction it was going to make, when in fact, us being the designers of the Roomba, we recognize that the choices between left or right were not made from itself, but rather from the fluctuations of the photons.
Well, and there's an interesting point, and there's kind of a meta point on top of that. All right, when you say state of the brain at X, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if it's the state of the, gastric intestinal system? Maybe what if it's the state of my legs?
Sure, the whole system, the whole brain body system would be the self.
Well, what if it's the state of infrared energy from the sun that's coursing through my body?
And that might be part of the complex chain of, I call
it. What if it's the total number of galactic protons that are potentially creating clouds and cloud cover that are affecting the shadow that rests on my head and whatnot?
Yep. But
so
I'm with you.
When you do the causal analysis for that time, which frame are you choosing for making sense of the causal chain?
Well, again,
how do you tie all that together?
Well, the way I tie it together is that our internal system is always interacting with the outside system. Like we're always taking in data, processing data.
No. When you explain why I chose to pick up the rock or to shade my head,
listen, I am not pretending we have access to the complete list of factors.
I know, but I'm trying to get at a fundamental problem.
I don't know, but I don't think that's a problem. Everything that you're saying, I think, is part of the analysis. That's part of
right. But how are you choosing which part of the analysis? Yeah, I want you to understand.
Here's the thing. It's a theoretical
I'm
analysis.
dropping this pin to make an illustration. Think of how clear that description is. It's just a few interesting little words here. Now I'll try to describe it mathematically.
Well, I did want to kind of get Matthew's response to my critique / appreciation there.
I got the appreciation. I didn't get the criticism. I was trying to hear that.
Okay, so when most people are referring to, like, say, free will or determinism, they're not referring to the appearances, but rather the ontological reality of, like, or randomness even. Like, sure, like Concept Hut was bringing up in chat that there are things that might appear random to us that are not in fact random, but rather, there's kind of the distinction between things that are actually random or not actually random. And I think he's kind of a hard determinist and doesn't think that even quantum processes are random, but rather determined through some other mechanism of some sort. And there's certain quantum interpretations for that as well. And so the critique is that when we're referring, I think, maybe not all the time, but when we're, at least on a philosophical sense, we're referring to the ontological status of whether or not we like possibilities or randomness or determinism or choice. These are actual realities rather than just apparent realities.
Okay. So I believe what you're saying is that you were saying that I seem to be coming from more of a practical position rather than an ontological position.
Yes.
And you said a lot of things to illustrate that, correct?
Yeah. And being or referring to myself as somewhat of a pragmatist, that's where I am definitely appreciating it. And mm-hmm. So I'd like to somehow like connect these two. Like, if we can tie in our practical definitions to the ontological definitions, maybe like we attribute the ontological status to the things that appear to us as being random, or like say we attribute some sort of random ontological status to things which appear to us as being random.
Well, and if I'm reading Matthew correctly, what you're saying, Matthew, I think, is that you're in areas where we can map or model the deterministic framework, you're comfortable saying that's determined. But in areas where it's, say, combinatorially impossible to do, you're not comfortable making that leap to say, okay, yes, I agree, this is also determined.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's fair enough. But I think we do have to separate that from the definition of determined or not determined, and more say it's an application of we know this is determined versus we don't know this other thing is determined.
Okay, so my question then is, what is it determined by?
Well, this is why I say the state of the universe. It's all these systems. I mean, the universe is made up of like all of these interacting forces and objects and everything.
Well, the question is how strong
is free will part of that state of the universe?
Yeah. Sorry, the will is part of that state of the universe. Yes.
Why not free will?
Well, again, that's what we're trying to figure out. My issue, my issue is I can't figure out how to describe the will in any way that's not a mixture of determined and random. So, which leads to me, where's the room for free will? And that's why I can't.
Well, I think you've just described why you can't, which is that you're not looking at independent systems interacting. You're looking at the entire universe.
No, I know, but I'm looking at independent systems as well. Like, again, we can zoom in. Like if I'm looking at what's going on right here in this room, I'm not thinking about what's going on at the other side of the universe, right? I'm thinking about what's going on in this, my brain body system, plus the immediate area around me that I'm interacting with, right? That's the probably most salient systems. I mean, maybe you're right. Like some photon from the sun has caused some, for example, like DNA randomness is often, it can be caused by solar flares, right? Like we can branch out, but when I think about it, I mean, I think normally in terms of my brain processing, for example, in terms of how my will, what's actually going on within the brain processing of my, here. That's how I, and that brain processing is as complex as it gets, right? So I don't see what I don't understand with why you separate out complicated and simple from complex or whatever. Like, first of all, I don't know that there's any, like it's sort of like when do adding grains of sand become a hill? Like, the delineation of where something becomes complex versus complicated or simple, it's arbitrary.
Let me put it this way, if I can. There are two directions, at least in this case, that our skepticism can lie. Our skepticism can lie about how skeptical we are of whether free will actually exists, or our skepticism can lie towards something like whether or not determinism is a complicated enough system to talk about the universe. And I'm leaning in that direction. I'm discussing free will because I am the system that's determining my words. Like,
I agree.
I'm reacting to you. You influence me, obviously, but you're not actually causing my brain to do what it's doing, which then causes my throat to produce sounds. You're not doing that, and the universe isn't doing that.
Well, what do we mean by causing? Like what I see things as a causal chain. So there are sounds coming out of my voice, and those sounds come into your, you get received in your ears through the computer, and it's information. And because we're speaking the same language, your brain is able to interpret the words that I'm saying, and it starts being processed within your brain. And, you take it in, and it gets integrated with everything else that it gets filed somewhere. And then there's all sorts of loops and, feedback loops and whatnot of brain processing going on. And then, so there is a causal chain. It's not the immediate effect. Like, the immediate effect would be once it gets in your head, but it's part of a causal chain. Like, we can track back.
Would you agree that there is strong and weak causations? Something like that.
If by that do you mean like different resolutions, like different parts of the chain, like the thing that's most closest in time versus going farther back in time? Is that what you mean?
As an example, let's say a 150-pound weight hits a 30-pound weight, but there's also a 1-pound weight that hits it. So both are colliding into the 50-pound weight, I think I said. So one has a strong effect, the other has a weak effect, right?
I mean, sure. Yeah, we could say that the 50-pound weight has a much bigger proportional effect than the 1-pound weight, crushing your head, so to speak.
Right. So if all you're saying is that there are some kind of causations external to us, of course I agree. But it's not obvious to me that any of them are strong causes, unless we're talking about actual physical damage to the body or like electrodes being plugged into the brain to control somebody.
Well, I mean, to me,
And
this is a bit of
there. It's between the strong and the weak
okay.
that we find our freedom.
But then I would say that my saying something that I get what you're saying, but my saying something that you react to would seem to be pretty strong. You would not be saying what you were saying if I didn't say.
I could ignore you though.
You could, but what I'm saying is
that's an option though. That's
sure.
A big deal. Rocks can't ignore other rocks.
Yeah, no one's saying that. But what I'm saying is it's a pretty important part of the causal chain that you're reacting to something I'm saying. It's not insignificant.
So an individual is made up of a lifetime of experiences.
Yes.
Right. Are you suggesting that this one interaction is stronger than all those?
No, I'm saying, well, the way I see this,
it's a variation on my memory argument.
Sure. The way I see it, that what we have, we have our memory, which is stored in our brains as well, right? So my words come into the head. Now the fact that I'm saying it to you right now makes it very salient to you. You're concentrating on it, so it's coming right in. Now, your brain is then going to process it and compare it to all sorts of other things, and it's going to compare it to certain things in your memory. Probably not everything in your memory, and we don't have access to what things in your memory it compares it to, but no doubt it's going to compare it to some things in your memory. But your memory is in the present, right? Like that analysis of your memory is happening in the present, right? So like we're getting into, again, it always come back to actual and potential, our discussion of actual potential. But I think like it's the now that exists, right? So the way the past influences us is in the way we access our memories now.
Well, so when you say the past, and the earlier question that I asked was something like, how do you describe this determination? What is it that you're choosing? How are you describing it? Because each time you're going into a description, you're saying, well, you're kind of vague ones too, right? Like these kinds of processes are occurring and this is why, right?
Are you asking me what do I think choice is?
No, I'm saying, what is it that you think is responsible when you say the past? So if you were talking about me picking up a rock, let's say, you would give a description, an account of my reasoning, my justification for it, right? If it were a rock flying through the air, you could try to model it with math, right? You could say, I expect it to take a parabolic curve, and then you have equations for that, right?
So are you, it seems like you're again looking at the practical aspect of whether we can, how much we can predict like which memories we're going to rely on. Like we don't have access to that. Like I don't know which memories, I don't have access to which memories I'm going to be drawing on in making.
No, okay, let me say, I'm going to throw the pin through the air, okay? And we're going to stop time t. Got it? Right in the apex of the parabolic curve. It's the most graceful arc. Now, we stop it. And I'm going to say, pod, describe to me this state. Why is the pin right there?
Okay, why? So,
and what are you going to do? Are you going to do parabolic mathematical curves? Or are you going to say, because Tyler was trying to illustrate a point about free will? Or are you going to do some crazy like historical narrative that includes the entire state of the universe?
But here's the thing. There are a bunch of aspects that went into your decision to put that pen through a...
All of them?
No, hold on. But these are different layers of abstraction. So I can describe your throwing of the pen in different ways. I can say, why is the pen there? It's because you use a certain amount of force with a certain amount of spin and angle and the air resistance and whatever. I can also say you decided to do it through a certain step of mental choices and deliberations that led you, like information processing that led you to that point to do that. but they're both right. They're not. It's not either or. They're like Matthew said. It's complex. There's a lot of stuff going on for everything we do.
So you have that little slice of time. Imagine it exists, and then imagine like next to it, you just start writing all that stuff.
Sure.
When do you stop?
Well, again, like it's combinatorially explosive, so we can't practically do it.
It's not combinatorial. No. Listen to me. It's not combinatorial explosive pod because you and I are doing it right now.
Yes, but we don't even know which aspects. We don't even know which aspects we don't know about.
All of this coalesced into being, and here it is. Right?
No. What I'm saying is,
the universe swirled and turned and spun, and the solar system and yada and how.
But we don't have access to describe it all in detail. We can do it general, like you just did, right? But we don't have access to. We don't have access to.
We have access to us.
Sure, but we don't have We don't know all the reasons why we do what we do.
I know we don't know all the reasons. In fact, that's a really big part of the point. But will is directly tied to the narrowing and the focusing of all of that stuff that's out there.
Sure.
Right? Systems which coalesce and collapse into local space that.
Wait, hold on. Can I ask a question? Do you think I think we don't have will?
I'm sorry?
Do you think I think we have no will?
No, I think you think that there is a prior state which one can describe that will definitely lead to another state.
Subject to randomness, right?
Yeah.
And our will is included in that. So I agree we have will. The state of our will is a certain quality. You could call it like an experiential state, which, as I'm leaning to, is a type of it's when information is integrated in a certain way, we have this experience of will, right? Which is a part of our experience of intention, of intentionality, right? We have this experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I can't figure out how this experience operates in a libertarian way.
Right. And there could be otherwise. Can I could be otherwise way, right?
Is it? And I just want to check in with Matthew. Is this useful, or do you think we're on track with here, or getting off track? Because I know we got a bit on a tangent, but I wanted also to bring it back to where we left off with yours too.
I'm not sure what you guys are talking about.
Hold on. Here.
Whoa, what just happened? Oh, okay.
Presenting.
He's drawn a picture for us.
It's a slice of time, boys. It's the infinite slit experiment. Okay. Pod, here's a particle.
Mm-hmm.
T equals 0. Where is it going next? You're telling me that you have some like sweet mathematical formula.
No, first of all,
that's gonna.
I'm not saying I have it, but
you're saying it's out there. It's out there, right? Like Laplace's demon, whatever, right? It's out there.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it can be mapped completely with the formula. Maybe it can't, but it's going to go somewhere, and maybe it's a wave and a particle at the same time. I tend to suspect they're both. It's always a wave and a particle, but
hold on. Actually, Brett, you had mentioned earlier that you didn't think that like you had a more open form of determinism where randomness could occur as well. But the fact that randomness does occur doesn't imply any sort of free will.
Doesn't imply libertarian free will, right?
Yeah, like I don't know. Maybe the point that you're trying to make here, Tyler, would only apply to the harder determinists rather than the soft determinists.
Well, it's kind of a weird meta point too, though, because look. So you're saying the state of this and that which follows is determined, right? And here's a little formula for it, right? Whatever that is. And I'm saying you can do this forever. Like this little particle is actually the pin, right? And the reason is Tyler is weird, right? You could list reasons and analyses for this thing and why it's occurring and how it's occurring forever. But what we've discovered alongside of this is you can't describe it from any particular perfect description. Like there's no way to determine from this state what's occurring.
Right.
And then you can zoom out of this and realize that this is occurring and that you and I are watching this, okay? And then we're going to zoom out however many layers we want in consciousness and discussion and analysis to figure this out. And that this very process through all of this is where choice takes place. The fact that we can move our attention and our gaze to make all of this stuff.
No, but hold on. I mean,
and that's in the gaps between the weak and the strong.
Listen, but this seems like you're making the choice. The free will is in the randomness of quantum mechanics.
No, I didn't say anything about quantum mechanics, but I mean,
but the reason you're using the double slit experiment. So
okay.
By definition, we're in quantum mechanics, and the reason we can't
infinite slits, right?
Sure, but the reason we can't predict where it's going is because of potentially the randomness of quantum mechanics. Now, it depends on your...
No. Wait, hold on. There are some very real reasons why we can't do that. Something like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, okay? And that's not related to randomness. That's related to performing a measurement on a system has very real...
Affects the system, right. But I'm not talking about the practical act of doing this, right? Like, although, keep in mind, I mean, marketers, like we do make a lot of predictions about what people do, but I'm not saying we can practically do it on a minute function. Like we can make a lot of predictions about human behavior, but we can't make exact predictions.
Well, we make arbitrarily precise predictions. That seems to be what we can do.
Yeah, I mean, marketers, know that if they use certain tricks, they're going to get a certain percentage of the population because people do tend to act in, groups of people tend to act in a certain way. But I'm not talking about I'm not talking here about the practicality of can we make the predictions? We're not Laplace's demon. We don't have access to all the information to make these predictions. So like in Matthew's version of complexity, there are things that are too complex for us to make these predictions.
And but the point is you're just saying it, like you're assuming it to be true. And I'm pointing out, if we assume it to be true, here's the problem.
I'm not seeing the problem though. And so can you
you're saying, Tyler, accept determinism, right? Just accept the vague statement that there is a kind of
what I'm saying
you can use to predict the next
I'm
state.
saying I can't figure out, and I haven't heard an explanation that doesn't describe how will works in a way that's different from a mixture of determined and random. And so
I think that's related to the causal error before.
But I'm not convinced that's an error.
Well, hold on. When we were, I think in our last discussion, like towards the end, we like tried to formulate an idea of like what does the libertarian free will even mean? And that's where we kind of got into our Aristotelian understanding of possibility, where there are possibilities for the ways in which things could go, and the free agent is the one choosing amongst those possibilities and actualizing one of them.
Yes.
So, I mean, that, I don't know, maybe you wouldn't say, maybe your position is that you don't think that even then they would be free, or that even then it wouldn't be some sort of free will. But I don't know.
Well, I think it's I think we are agents, meaning we have this brain body system which is making decisions and deliberating in that information. So I believe we're agents, and that's where responsibility comes in and all of that. But I mean, again, that's a whole the practical difference.
That wasn't what I was mean. You were saying that you couldn't conceive of a way in which you could have free will that wasn't somehow either determined or random. But I don't know if we like look. Go ahead.
But I'm saying within the agent, it seems to me that what's going on is done in a mixture of determinism and randomness. Like the way we make our choices, the way we make our will is done in a way that seems to be a mixture of either determined or a mixture of determinism and random. in randomness. Like that's so you guys keep on focusing on the difference between the brain body system and the external world. We all agree with that. That to me, my understanding is compatibilism. But I think where we're really getting off, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'll have to do some reading. To me, it's all about the causation. And actually, I was really surprised, Tyler, when you said it's not about the causation, and the rest of you guys agreed.
We all accept causality, I think. Don't we?
But do you accept causality in a determined way?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
In a consistent way.
But I'll be honest, I'm still not entirely clear on what your difference, Matthew, between determined and consistent is, except with regard to the practical ability of, can we consistently predict something versus can we not consistently predict something? I understand.
Well, that is a very practical way of differentiating the things, so that we're not way out in abstract land. I love abstract land, but it's limited. Like we've ripped the world apart to create abstract land. So we don't have the world anymore. We have a bunch of abstract ideas we're trying to model the world from. And my argument is if you got something out in abstract land and then you go, well, I don't see it out here in real world like it is in abstract land, the real world must be wrong. It's like, no, check abstract land. Maybe it's wrong. And that's how I feel about determinism.
Well,
and the idea with...
Are you sure we don't see it in the real world, though? I mean, like when you introspect in your thinking, do you, you see what I'm getting at?
What?
Yeah. So that's again Matt's strong and weak willed arguments, right? So we each of us have a sense that we have more or less influence on that which happens to us or that which we inflict on the world or whatever, right? I think that actually has a great impact on even the rigidity with which we hold to our views on determinism or free will.
But sorry, hold on. I just want to understand what you mean by we don't see it in the real world. What do you mean? Can you give me an example of what you mean by that?
So in other words, you have
the
to
example
make free will an
was
illusion.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to say.
Sorry, I missed that. Say that again.
You have to create will or free will, and it has to become an illusion, like a weird byproduct of information processing, right? It's just a thing happening to us, but we're not causing it.
Well, except you got to define what we is. Like I define the self as this information processing system. So it is us doing it. We're doing
right,
it.
But
we
when I say
right,
but when I say what is causing it, then you say, oh, okay, well then this is causing it, and you refer to something other than pod. You refer to psychology or biology or chemistry or mathematics or physics.
No, but define pod.
Some other system
what
that's
is
not
pod?
Right?
What is pod though?
Your subjective experience.
What am I? My subjective experience.
I'm trying to tell you, man. I'm trying. You're Pinocchio, buddy.
All right. But what I'm saying is, okay, does anyone disagree that one way to describe me is an information processing system?
Yes. Another way to describe you is a child of God, capable.
No. Hold on. I didn't say. I said, is it one way? It's one way to describe me, an information processing system.
Yep.
So do you think that's not a way to describe me at all?
No, I think that's a great way.
That's
really
fine.
Nice.
I have no problem with that.
Okay, so what I'm talking.
I'd like to call you a friend too.
Yeah, yes, I agree. That's why I said one way. I didn't say the only way. One way to describe me is an information processing.
Which
system.
frame should we choose?
I think the salient frame when we're analyzing, do I have free will, is how does the system that is me process that information? Does it do it in a deterministic way or a free way?
Now you are referring to another system other than your subjective one.
No, I'm saying I think my subjective experience is part of the system that is me.
No, but you're referring to something outside of that for another explanation.
No. My subjective experience is part of the chain of causation. It's part of the analysis. It's part
right.
Of
so why is that not sufficient? When I say, why are you joining this call? You say, you don't answer physics. You don't answer math. You don't answer, well, you might start with economics. I don't
simply
know.
because I wanted to, because it brings me enjoyment, because blah, 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 blah.
And that's
right.
Good
but
enough.
That's part of the cause and effect chain.
Yeah. You decided.
Right.
You
Wait,
decided that whole thing.
Well, where are we disagreeing? So wait, where are we disagreeing? Where are we disagreeing?
Your desire to step outside of that and say, well, it's not that. It's actually all this other stuff.
No,
Yeah,
Using other systems.
my desire is part of it.
I think Tyler's point is that you're kind of like attributing all components of causation as being the same type of being determined.
No. Hold on. Hold on.
There's intentional causation, there's physical causation, there's neurochemical causation, and then by putting them all in the same sort of bucket of determined, then you're kind of like losing a lot of the grasp on like.
Listen, it's
John
a
is so
big.
eloquent sometimes.
But I don't want to be mistaken. When I'm just saying it broadly, I am not saying we couldn't delve very deep into describing the very complex nature of the web, the recipe, the soup.
Why?
Why?
Why delve so deeply? And where do you stop? Which one's good enough?
This is what John Vervecchi was saying. Why there's no thing there, because we for any of these things we can keep on looking really.
We can
forever.
We can even build a supercomputer that can replicate the mind, so I can predict what you're going to do next.
Possibly, but so although that mind, that computer probably still wouldn't have access to all of it. But anyway, what I'm saying is don't mistake my broad categorization of determinism and state of the universe for not appreciating that these are very complex systems that we're talking about.
Well, I don't know, because you appear to want to jump to a very simplistic determinism when we get to this idea of free will, and that's strange to me.
But to be very clear, I think there is an extremely complex, like our brains are incredibly complex information processing machines. They take into the number of calculations per second is.
Right, but my point earlier, how simple is it for you to tell me your reasoning for how you got to where you are today? You don't need all that.
Sometimes it's simple, sometimes it's not, and I probably don't have. And as somebody who's going to a therapist for a while, you don't always know how you think you're acting is not always why you're acting. So, but
I think that's a very salient point.
What I'm saying is like in any one of these systems, these complex systems, we can zero down into what is going on, and we could theoretically track all these interacting parts, right, Matthew? Mm-hmm. Like.
So why do you think that's the case?
To some degree, yes.
Yeah, that was actually one question I had for Matthew. I wanted to get a better understanding of what he means by like a complicated system, because it seemed almost as if, like, if you have, say, a determined system and another determined system and another determined system, and then kind of like fit them all together in some way, that it becomes a complex system. But does that aggregation of three determined systems into a complex system suddenly like open up a space for free will in some sense to you?
So my whole point is that we can analyze and determine things in a deterministic system. We can do that. Mm-hmm. If it's simple enough that we human beings can track it, then it might be complicated, but with the right tools, we can still track it. What I'm saying is it appears to be the case that with a complex system, there's too much going on. And we have tremendous, like storms. We can't predict storms. Mm-hmm. We don't really know how evolution works. Not really. There's so many things that are so complicated that we cannot model them. So whatever free will is, I'm saying we don't know necessarily what it is. That's kind of my point, I suppose. I'm saying that we shouldn't just throw the concept out because it's so functional. It functions in our everyday life. We talk about deciding what I will do. I'm choosing. There's absolutely zero evidence that external powers are forcing me, or the universe itself is forcing me to do something.
But I'm just a system doing things. Are you including yourself in the universe there? Or are you thinking of yourself as no, because when you say that the universe is forcing me, we're part of the universe.
We're part of the universe, but the universe in some cases strongly influences us, like when a car runs into us. It's a pretty strong effect. And sometimes it weakly affects us, like light bouncing off of things. And
wait, why is that a weak effect?
Because
well,
it doesn't
I've
kill
been
you.
to the beach
it
way
doesn't kill
too
you.
often here in
It doesn't
Florida.
kill you.
so-
Well,
I mean,
no,
it might burn your skin. That's true.
but doesn't it? Wait a minute. In navigating the world, the light coming into your eyes.
See, this is why I think you're oversimplifying things. If you can't see the difference between a rock smashing a body and a light beam affecting a person, it's.
But why? No, but you're just talking about a different type of causation. You're talking about physical harm.
Of course, I'm talking about different kinds.
No,
Of course I am.
But navigating the world is just as important. Is just as huge, and it's it's
wait. What do you mean by just as? How are you ranking that? How are you just deciding to rank that?
I'm saying at any when we're in a car accident, that's the most salient thing for us. But right now, for example, the light coming into my eyes and seeing you and directing my vision is hugely important for where I decide to look when I'm looking.
It's important,
right?
But is it a strong effect? And my argument is it is not, because the whole person is what is determining what the effect will be.
Right.
Not the sound waves that you are sending to me, but me. I am what's determining what I will do from the sound effects you send me.
Okay, so kind of like
yes, I agree with that.
If you get hit
That's
by a car, if you get hit by a car, that is like causally a big thing that's happening to you. Whereas the light bouncing off of, I don't know, my phone case next to me, that's only tangentially related to me, and only if I'm like specifically seeking that out or something like that.
Go. If you were blind, I think you might have a different perception of that. But but
how would I have a perception of light bouncing off my eyes if I was blind?
You would have a different perception of how important light bouncing off your eyes is. That it's crucial. But
it wouldn't
so much of our decision.
Yeah. Okay. I don't understand.
Can I do another screen share here?
Yeah.
Let's see if this one helps.
Like honestly, I'm getting the sense that we're almost agreeing that we're agreeing more than we think here.
I always think that's the case with you, Todd. I feel like I'm always struggling to get you to agree with me.
Yeah, I think we tend to agree quite a bit on the practical experiences that we all share, and less so with like what are the ontological implications of those experiences.
Well, we still have to return back to the whole causation aspect not being what's involved with determinism. But let's deal with Matt's first.
All right. So, as I've been trying to say, determinism I see is a very simplistic thing. It's simple enough that we limited, tiny little people can determine what the cause effect chain was. With a more complicated system, we have to use a concept more like consistency, where we are mapping the way systems interact. It's not this caused this. It's okay. I don't know even what's going on inside the system. I have to observe from outside the system and kind of get a rough idea of how it's going to react into things.
It's memory. It's induction.
So consistency is about.
It's the practical, right? It's the practical versus what's actually going on. What can we practically
No. We don't know what's actually going on.
Okay, no, but hold on.
We make abstract models to oversimplify the universe and use those tools to try to figure out what's going on. But that's not the same as knowing what's going on. That's why I'm so against this idea of just saying, well, it must be determined. We have no idea.
Yeah, it's like if I watch cells divide in the petri dish, right? If I stick some bacteria in there and give them on an agar plate or whatever, like I can guarantee it's determined, right? I can tell you the division rate for which it's going to occur, right? I can give you the growth curve. I can e to the x, right? We can go through all of that stuff, but that is a very abstract model to describe what is
hold on, let me ask you a question.
Complex.
Before we ever modeled it, would you say it was determined, or are you guys only saying it's determined once we've modeled it? Because that's
what I'm leaning towards.
And I'm not. Like, I'm saying whether we've modeled it.
And that's why I'm saying we're disagreeing.
Yeah. I think determinism is true at an arbitrary rate to describe the past. That's what I think. And for any other thing, forget it.
So again,
like, you can choose arbitrary systems with which to describe.
I'm just trying to zero in on our agreement and disagreement. So it seems that we're just seeing it differently, where I'm talking about sort of the abstract ontological reality, or what we think is the abstract ontological reality, not abstract, what we think might be the ontological reality. And you're focusing on, well, what have we confirmed is determined versus what we haven't confirmed is determined, because we haven't been able to model it. So
like from Matthew's point of view, you're overexerting your model of determinism onto everything when you have no basis for that.
So let me frame, and I don't know if this is helpful. My version is this: I am not 100% convinced that everything is determined. I think what I know is we have in the past managed to figure out a lot of the deterministic processes. When I think about what's going on with what I think is going on with consciousness, it seems like they're also deterministic processes, maybe with some randomness going in. And so I make an inference that until I get a model of free will that works, I'm going to lean towards we probably don't have it. So I don't say we don't have free will. I say we probably don't have free will. And I can't figure out how it can work. And to the extent that we can figure things out, it seems to always be a mix of randomness and determination.
But see, this is strange to me, because you agree, I think you've agreed with me, that free will is a useful term that we use to describe things people do, right? In a practical sense.
Yeah, and that's where we talk about.
So this blows my mind. You have practical evidence that this is a thing, and yet you say, but I'm going to assume it doesn't exist in reality. And I don't understand that.
It's the difference between compatibilism and libertarian. That's why Dan Dennett says compatibilism is the free will we care about, for exactly what you just said. That's the free will we care about for our practical day-to-day, the compatibilist notions. That's where we get our notions of responsibility.
Yes, but you're just saying assume determinism to be true.
Right. That's the problem.
No.
See, okay.
I didn't just say
POD.
That. I gave more than that. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So far as I can tell, the best we can do is we can make these very, very abstract models about the universe, and we can use those to show, deterministic results. But it seems the height of arrogance to me then to just say, well, then that must mean everything out here is deterministic. And therefore we can just, even though we have the practical evidence of free will in action before our very eyes, our very experiences with people every day, we'll just assume it doesn't work because we don't have a model. I don't understand that.
Well, no,
like, doesn't it make more sense to say we have something called free will because we're all using it? We don't have a model, though.
Hold on.
So let's work on the model. That's a completely different position.
What I say is this. I agree with the compatibilist version of free will, right? So you could call me a compatibilist there, even though I don't love the term, but you can call me a compatibilist there. But from everything I know, including my understanding of how consciousness works and where I lean there, it seems much more consistent with ontologically being determined rather than free in some way we haven't discovered yet.
Okay, so right there you're saying you're agreeing that it's determined, right? So I'm going to ask you, determined by what?
By it's causation of the prior state of the system or the universe.
Right, so magic.
The system. Okay.
So magic, the system, magic.
Well, it's not just like the prior state. There's specific components to the prior state. Yes. Like you're not saying that what's going on in China is causing you to say the words that you're saying right now. It's specific things in the system.
I shortcut it to just the state of the universe, but you can zero in on whatever level of abstraction, layer of abstraction you want. Like if we're talking about well,
hold on. Do you actually think that what's happening in China is affecting the way that you're like the words that you're going to choose right now?
I mean, probably not. So no. But although, I mean, I don't know. There's chaos theory and all that. The butterfly, wings of. So I don't know. Maybe in some like Matt would say, in a weak way. Maybe.
Well, at least within Einstein's relativity theory, like if something has to go faster than the speed of light, I mean, we wouldn't assume some sort of causation occurring. Of course, there are flaws with that theory.
But it depends. Like if we're talking about China, then stuff that's going on in China, and it's a complicated causal chain. But no, like I think it makes sense.
Tyler was asking what is determining the choices that you're making, and so if we can rule out
the immediate
China,
cause, the immediate cause is the information processing going on in my mind.
So that's your sense experience, or
sense experience is part of it, right? There's sense experience, my cognition, my whatever, all the analytical processing. Sure. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
All of
so
those.
The choice of vanilla ice cream was because of the microtubules made you do it?
No, but the choice of vanilla ice cream is again, it's complex, but it's going to be going on how I feel at the moment, my memories of past experiences, blah 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 blah. Right? Like some of which I may have access to. Like I have access to.
Mm-hmm.
Do I feel like chocolate right now? I don't have access to, which memories I'm relying on. And my last time I had chocolate, it felt really good. Or, I didn't really like chocolate last time at this Baskin Robbins, their chocolate's not really good. So their vanilla is better. There's a whole series of things, some of which I have access to, meaning I'm conscious of, and others I'm not conscious of, but that's still going on underneath the hood.
And you're convinced that all those things are deterministic.
By convinced, I'm saying it's an inference based on that I'm open to, like what I say, I'm open to a description of libertarian free will that makes sense to me, which I just haven't heard yet. And
so I would love to know, like I've offered some definitions. You've continued to argue with me, but I haven't heard you say specifically what in those definitions you find problematic.
Well, no, okay. Well, let's zero in on one. Here, give me one to zero in on, and I'll.
Okay, so I've described self-determinism, and I'm, so far as I can tell, you've agreed with that in the past.
Here's
so
one.
I'll just move on.
The individual is in control of their own actions. That seems to be a good one.
Sure.
That's for libertarian free will. That's your definition, I think.
Like that seems obvious. The system that is you is controlling the actions, controlling the outputs. Nothing else actually creates the output from your mouth. You do. So what's wrong with that?
Nothing's wrong with it. Except that the me may do that in a deterministic way.
Yeah, so that's not sufficient an explanation. So you need to go elsewhere you need to go elsewhere to find the explanation, right?
Like I think it's a fine practical version of free will that we use and that I use just for in the compatibilist sense of, that I am the one making the decision. I am the agent. It is this system making the decisions. It's not somebody else. It's me making the decisions. And so I'm responsible for my decisions and so on. So I agree with that. I don't know that necessarily qualifies as what I would call libertarian free will. I think that process may go on in a determined way. Not I don't mean determined in that we have.
Wouldn't that contradict the definition though? Because if it's determined by external causes, then it wouldn't be the individual doing it.
I don't. This is one thing I wanted to get into, and I don't think the external aspect is where the compatibilist comes in, but libertarian has to deal with the internal causes too.
So, okay, that just seems like your definition of libertarian free will is something kind of like different from, well, I don't know, maybe libertarians would agree with it, but I'm not sure. It seems strange to say that libertarian free will is where actions are caused neither by external means nor internal means.
No, but when we say internal, we mean internal to this system, right? Are we on the same page there?
Yes.
Yeah.
So my brain is so how are things within that system working? In a determined way? And I don't mean determined meaning we've actually modeled it out and figured it out. I mean, it's acting in a cause and effect way where each step leads to the next step leads
It
to the
depends
next
on what
step,
you
leads
mean
to-
by determined. Like, are you meaning like
Well-
externally determined or internally determined?
Yes.
I mean, the system works in a determined way. So I
Which
do not-
system?
That's the
an
same as what you said
internally
before.
deterministic way, like
Or
that
externally
system is what's
deterministic.
making the determinations, or is
Right, the
something
sys-
external to that system?
No. Right. So the system as a whole is making the decisions, but it may be making that
Which
decision in a way.
system?
The brain body,
The individual,
system,
yeah.
that is me, the individual.
Right, but when you say
Well, hold on. He was
system-
just about to answer the question. I wanted to hear his
Well,
response.
I'm defining self as the brain body system that is me. So this
Sure.
configuration of whatever that it. That,
No, I think this is ridiculous that you guys are just okay with that. Like, sure.
So how,
No,
okay, so how
no.
would
Well,
you define?
I wanted him to answer
No.
the question first, Tyler.
No,
like
but,
we
like-
wanted
like,
to.
so-
Yeah. Is
so
it
there's-
determined through internal means or external means?
So we could take this system. This system is complicated. We can think of it as a whole, but it's made up of a whole bunch of parts doing a whole bunch of stuff, including our brain, which is doing a million, billion, gajillion different things. And
Yeah.
that is, I think, the stuff going on in my brain, I think, is probably
Okay.
and again, like is going in a fairly deterministic way, subject to randomness.
Hold on. What I'm asking, we're asking the question. Are you saying determined by the internal mechanisms or by external mechanisms?
It's happening in this system.
That's what we're arguing free will is, though. So
But if you're just- but
why
then
are you
what's the
rejecting that?
No, but that seems to be what compatibilism is. So what's
Oh my
the
gosh,
difference?
I don't
No, hold on.
saying it's compatible doesn't like I don't know what
Because-
move you're trying to make by saying that.
Listen, if the only-
Compatibilism says free will exists, right?
compatibilism says free will is compatible with determinism. That's what.
Okay. I guess I can agree with that.
Well, then we agree.
But
then we agree.
The move that gets made next almost always is free will is an illusion.
yes, that's the
No,
problem
no,
I have with
but- Libertarian free will may be an illusion, but not.
Yeah, but that's
Well, I know. I know at least Dan
hold on,
Dennett,
hold on.
who's a
Can we-
convict.
Can we pause? Can we pause? We may have just reached some agreement. Can we
some
celebrate that?
consensus.
Yes.
Woo!
Yeah. The individual is in
I
control
like
of their
it, I
own
like it.
actions through internal means. Like that is free will,
Yeah.
and that is compatible with determinism.
And where it's happening in here, we're not sure, but it's in there, right?
All right.
Sure.
There somewhere.
Wait, this is great. Wait, are we on the same page here?
We are.
wow.
That's amazing.
Okay.
How often
We've
does
got
that
a
happen?
definition of
Only
free
on the
will
same
now.
page. We're
There
in
we
the
go.
same skull.
This magic moment.
No, seriously, that never happens.
lips
I'm very.
are close.
I feel cheery now. It's like, oh my god, we've done something amazing. Like that's the most. That's the definition of a productive conversation. Like that's awesome. Like it's frustrating.
I'm glad
to
we
get
decided to have this.
Now I feel like we should just stop.
Probably should. I need to get to bed.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
But yeah, no, this is probably a good place to stop. And I think there's probably more to talk about. But I think
Yeah, well, I didn't even get to. Okay.
Look at all the notes he's got to go through.
I mean, if you want to get down to the technicalities of deterministic systems, I was ready, man. Like, if you want to get into it, I'll tell you.
Yeah. And there's this other component that I've been thinking on for myself, and like, what are the moral implications to if determinism is true? Like, what are the but
that's a good conversation to have. Yeah, I think
Sure.
that, and that's a separate one. Yeah, but that and maybe that's a great point for our next conversation. But I think
this is going to be like a 20-part series.
no, but
We'll just add in a new person every single time.
Yeah, no, that's right. No, but that's like most people don't take the time to work through these issues, and I think that's what we should be doing. And we can sort of break through, like we've broken through something here, and again there was a mixture of frustration and fun and all that, but we got somewhere where if we had only had an initial conversation, we wouldn't have done that. And that's what I think we should be encouraging, like these deep dives where we work through and we push through. We say, we know there's somewhere we can get to if we just keep on pushing. Because most people give up.
Pushing, exactly. And that's actually something I wanted to raise at the start. What I'm going to try to do is do the serious play thing that's discussed often and that we need more of. And that is that we're able to as vulnerable with as much vulnerability as we can muster, let's say, expose our ideas and just let them be played with roughly, right? Let them get beat up, right? See how strong they are. And then, take a little bit of that bruising on ourselves. And I want to be bruised, in a weird kind of masochistic way.
Me too. Yeah.
So I really appreciate the fact that all of this can take place. Like, there are an extraordinary number of people that are willing to engage in this, and such incredible talent too. Like, really, the knowledge base and skill on YouTube is phenomenal. So, not just YouTube, by the way. That's a arbitrarily chosen category for efficiency means. But yeah, I've appreciated this conversation, guys. Thanks a lot.
Great, Matt. Do you want to have any last wrap up words, or shout out your channel, or?
Oh, yeah, you can go look at my channel if you want. That's fine.
Yeah. So Matt's link is in the description. And Tyler, I'm not sure if I think I did dig up yours too, your new channel. So Tyler is just starting a new channel, and I think he's going to be posting this as one of his first videos. So we look forward. So please log on to Tyler's and Matthew's, and John, you have a channel too. I think I put the link in the description. I'll check. If I didn't, I'm going to add it. So please, everyone, subscribe to all.
John's latest is a real hoot.
It's pretty fun.
And this has been great. John, do you have any last words you want to wrap up?
Yeah, this was fun.
This is great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thanks for everyone who's watching and who's watching now and who's going to watch later. Again, please like and subscribe. This was great. I plan on having other content that's not about free will on this channel. I just have to get off my butt and do it. I have all the ideas. It's just getting off the laziness or I have a bunch of video scripts started. I just have to wrap them up. So that'll be coming soon. I plan on focusing on.
I highly doubt it's laziness pod.
Yeah, it's just
it's probably Dark Souls.
That's true.
Your industriousness is being colonized
exploited
by a game designer.
I am deeply addicted to Dark Souls 2 now, and I keep on thinking I'm near the end of the game, and then I find these new areas anyway.
You're not addicted to the game. You're addicted to completing the game.
That's right. And just I gotta play this hard game.
All right, now, but the key to this is reframing it, right?
That's right.
You got to realize that potential within you, that amazing capacity that you have to fixate on a goal and then reach it. That's a superpower, man. It's a superpower.
That's great. Well, thank you, everyone. And I'm going to hold on. Oh, I have to figure out how to. I'm not good at this. Okay, I'm going to end the stream. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.